school district school committee will be conducted both in person and remote until further notice. In-person attendance is limited to Bhrsd school committee members, superintendent, district and school administrators. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted at this time. However, the meeting may be accessed remotely through the above coordinates. Agenda items listed are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, and not all items listed may in fact be discussed. Items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being recorded by CTSP and the school committee recorder and will be broadcast. Once transcribed and approved, minutes will be made public and posted to our website. And with that announcement, I will start the meeting with a call of the roll. Corey Sprigg.
Here.
Diane Singer.
Here. Here.
William Fields.
Here.
Molly Thomas. Absent. Bonnie Bond Buffoni.
Here.
Sean Stephen.
He's absent.
Absent. Jason St. Peter.
Here.
Ann Hutchinson.
Here.
Steve Bannon, chair, is absent, and Rich Mahoney, vice chair, is present. As noted, Steve Bannon is not present today. He is tending to the nuptials of his son, Josh. So on behalf of the committee, we wish Josh and the entire Bannon family congratulations on that. And the only downside is that you're stuck with me for this evening. With that, we'll jump, what you said.
Yeah, maybe that's okay. So
yeah, we'll jump right to the SOAP presentation. Those folks, I believe, should be ready to go.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about this. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties getting onto Zoom. We should be all set now. There are 14 panelists and 17 attendees. And I'll introduce, I can introduce everybody, but we're going to start with the Stoke report. I'll introduce Lily, who's the co-host, or now a co-host. So you, Lily, can share slides. And then if you could introduce Jish and Jen and Maya, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here with you today, even though it's virtual. Great. Just give me 1 second. Can everyone see a PowerPoint?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Wonderful. All right, great. So if y'all are ready, I'm just going to get started. My name is Lily. I'm a member of the Stoke Collective. It's nice to see some familiar faces on this call, as well as some new faces. I'm here with some of my colleagues. Jishva Patel is on the call. Maya Ross is on the call. And Jen Sandler will be hopping in shortly. And we, the last time we were at the school committee was when we were presenting our big report from a 3-month-long equity assessment that we did within the district about a year ago. And we're here to share what has happened since then. Our scope of work for this year was shaped by that assessment. We're really excited to share with all of you some of the successes we've witnessed, some of the moments that we feel like we've learned from collectively, and the activities we had a chance to participate in as we accompany the district in moving the needle on equity this year. So just something I want to reiterate is that word accompaniment. We, as Stoke, we use something that we call an accompaniment model, meaning that this presentation isn't going to be about what we did as Stoke. It's going to be about the progress that the district made. And we were on the journey with all of you together. And it's important for us to emphasize because so many people have done so much work this year to move the culture of the district towards equity. And we wanted to make sure we highlighted some of that work in this presentation based on the spaces we were able to be in. So that's sort of some framing to get us started. And just to say that this was probably one of the most challenging years that most people can remember. And the fact that the district hasn't shied away from doing this work is big. And so we just wanted to say that at the top, considering the context of this school year. So I'm going to pass it over to Jish, and she's just going to do a little refresher on some of the goals we were hoping to work towards together this year.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for having us. My name is Jishva, and I will be sharing a little bit about the goals for this year. So these may or may not look familiar to you, but these are the things that we aimed for when we began working with you all and in the school district after that report that Lily was just talking about was finished. Overarchingly, each of these goals are working towards the overarching goal of wanting to support the district in doing equity work in better and more relational ways, and in ways that are more accountable to the people of this district. So throughout the year, we've tried to remain pretty emergent in terms of the how we've worked to accomplish these alongside the district folks that we've been working with. And we'll be highlighting both the work that we've been part of, as well as the places in the district, like Lily was saying, where these goals have been being worked toward outside of the scope of our work. So as you can probably tell from the pace that Lily and I have been taking, we're going to be moving through the slide deck relatively quickly, and we're going to try our best to highlight one or two major successes and areas of growth so that we can fit this presentation into the allotted time. So the first area that we're going to start with is the work that we did with Muddy Brook Elementary School. So coming out of last year's phase 1 assessment period, we were left with a feeling of there being a marked underrepresentation of what equity work needs to happen at the Muddy Brook level. So one of the main ways that we addressed this is by pivoting our scope of work to just smaller scale assessment with Muddy Brook parents and educators. So the findings of those conversations were put together into a Muddy Brook report addendum of the Berkshire Hills report. And the findings of those conversations helped us to better reflect back to Katie Retzel and Cynthia Carey how the work of Muddy Brook around equity can continue to be rooted in what families and educators see as being main priorities. Since that sharing of those findings, Katie and Cynthia have used our report to guide the making of goals for the next academic year and have had some conversations with paraprofessionals that work at Muddy Brook and have shared the recommendations that came out of the report back to families through the Lance newsletter. In terms of upcoming steps that we'll be taking to share that information back, we'll be working with Katie and Cynthia to organize a conversation with families for the beginning of the next school year so that they can give a more conversational feedback on what those findings were and what the recommendations and goals for the coming year are. And there will also be support for Katie and Cynthia around holding conversations and discussions of the report with faculty, both through the professional development work that will happen over the summer, particularly at the end of June and at the start of the next school year. So I know that was a lot of information, but I'm going to share it over to Maya to continue talking a little bit more about collaborative relationships in the community and that goal in particular.
Thanks so much. And I'm going to reiterate two things that you said, just because I know that there's going to be a lot of information that's on the slides, so we will have an opportunity for you all to read those outside of this if you're interested. But so that's the first thing. The second thing is that when Jishva shared our goals initially, she highlighted that we were ultimately setting out to help the district become more accountable to the people of the district. And so if we can look at some of the successes and continue to grow. So thank you. So there were so many successes that came out of our time together this year. One of them being the Inclusion Task Force. So I know that's a group that some of you all are really familiar with and have had a chance to interact with. The group has met 12 times this year so far. and has had a few meetings with administrators, and there's been a sense of hope that the policies and infrastructures will really shift based on the conversations that were had between the Inclusion Task Force and admin. So a huge success there, along with the hiring of Marina Dominguez at the Railroad Street Youth Project and America as the parent liaison in the district, but really Marina helping to work with Spanish-speaking students, building trust, and also creating the language exchange program. Just really making sure that ELO students were brought into spaces like the Inclusion Task Force where they could really influence the school policy. And I think some of you all have had a chance to experience that impact as well. On the continue to grow side, so where as many successes that came with the Inclusion Task Force, we're still going to be looking for more the group is still looking to collaborate more with admin. And so we'll be working with the Inclusion Task Force in our future work to be in conversations with admin on at least every other month basis. I think we can move to the next one. You're ready, Lily? Awesome. So in addition to the collaborative relationships in the community, also focus on equitable relational trust with parents. And I mentioned before America as the parent liaison. And this was really one of the first concerted efforts on the part of the district. If we could just move to the successes and continue and grow. America as the established parent liaison. And so really, again, one of the first concerted efforts on the part of the district to think through how to engage ELL parents and also recently immigrated students in a way that has led to conversations in other areas like a Spanish-speaking guidance counselor, a mental health provider, and really making sure that students who are ELL and recently immigrated have the support that they need throughout the district. And then on the other side, there is still a lot of need, especially in the parent liaison as a consistent thought partner. So America, the current parent liaison, has been continuing to meet with folks at the district, with admin at the district, and really in this next year we'll be moving into a more consistent thought partner and consultant role. And again, moving through these relatively quickly, but would really love for you all to take an opportunity to read through some of these some more after we move through all of the different sections. So I will pass it on to Lily.
Sorry, y'all. Thank you with your as I manage multiple screens. So I have the privilege to talk about some of the gains in terms of student leadership development. This was one of the goals that I got to spend the most time hanging out with, and it was amazing. The students in this district are incredible, and so are the adults that support them. So really happy to share some of this stuff. In terms of strengthening students' capacity to build their own groups that are equitable and inclusive, like that was sort of our orientation to working with students. We're really focusing on how do we build capacity with specific student groups, and accompany them throughout the year, and also create opportunities for capacity building for students that are open to anyone, even if they don't see themselves as a leader. So that was sort of our charge, and then a lot of surprising things happened that were really great. So some of the successes in terms of student leadership development that we wanted to highlight is that we feel like there's a foundation now after this year of a leadership pipeline from the middle school to the high school. There's a lot to do with young people at the middle school and the high school having a chance to talk with one another and collaborate and skill build with one another, which happened in our training spaces, but also happened outside of the training spaces that we facilitated this year. Another thing we wanted to emphasize is the the work that happened with the student advocacy group. Again, this is something that I got to be really involved with and get to know the Abby and Julian and Paige really well. And the student advocacy program, while we accompany them, we're able to develop a really clear vision and a strategy to be sustainable. And this is really important because their work is sort of the pilot for what does a student-led restorative practices initiative look like? What are some alternatives to punitive discipline that students can take where the goal is repair? And this is a really important equity shift and something that's been alive in the district for a while, but students were really at the front of figuring out what would that look like to be student-led. And a lot of work was made in that direction. And they've developed a job description for a future coordinator of that position, and admin are involved in the process of figuring out how to make that work. And they were able to make a presentation to faculty about the work that they do, which sounds like went incredibly well. And there's a lot of energy now to support that work moving forward at Monument. Also want to emphasize that we shared a tool with the student advocacy program with that program and another training we did of doing one-to-ones, which is an organizing tool used to do outreach in an equitable way. And just super happy to report that students at both the middle school and the high school have done one-to-ones before the year ended to build relationships across their school and start to build some shared understanding and shared excitement around moving the needle on equity altogether. Also just want to lift up the fact that this year, several affinity spaces for marginalized students and for folks who are really interested in being part of Culture Shift Towards Equity started at Du Bois Middle School. This includes the BIPOC Student Union, Social Justice Club, and a GSA were strengthened this year. And we just want to emphasize this because these are critically important resources for students who are marginalized and also students who are interested in being part of that culture shift. So we just want to give really big props to Beth Walker-Thomas, Isaac Morales, and Zazu Galdos-Shapiro for being the advisors of those groups and pulling them forward and advocating for those students and what those groups need to keep going. And quickly just want to emphasize the establishment of a youth inclusion task force as part of the inclusion task force, which has its own culture and organizational structure to make sure that youth are at the front of a lot of the conversations around what does equity look like on the ground for students. Some places for continued growth is continuing to examine the current patterns of engagement of which students participate in student government, which students participate in clubs. We want students and also their advisors to continue asking questions about who's in the room and who's not in the room. And we're hoping to keep that at the top of the list next year. And we're also looking forward to offering, now that we have more of a sense of where student energy is and where students are grouping, to increase capacity for those groups to do their own outreach, to build their own relational cultures that really keep students engaged and involved. And that's all students and not just students that are usually tapped for these sorts of leadership opportunities.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that, Lily. So another area that we spent a lot of time this year is supporting administrators in improving their relational practices. So some successes in this area were that admin team members have increased their level of collaboration and workshopping support that they provide for each other. They've gotten a lot better since the beginning of the year in terms of recognizing what are scenarios or situations that I can bring back to my colleagues to be able to talk through how we can improve our responses as a district. And in terms of adapting their meeting structures to reflect discussion priorities and support needs identified by the administrative team. This has looked like giving building leaders more time to meet for cross collaboration as well as skill sharing and sharing approaches that they take with their common situations that arise in the schools. In terms of areas for continuing to grow, we know that Admin meetings are often full of many different agenda items, and with that, it can be hard for problem-solving conversations to be discussed to their full extent. In order to honor that, there are also other like time-sensitive topics that need to be gotten to. So this usually means that a lot of the administrative team members leave those conversations wanting to continue them at another time or have a chance at some other point to follow up with one another. And we know that with the emerging issues that need quick resolution that come up in the day-to-day, it can be hard to make the time to make sure that those follow-ups are happening. So we encourage administrators to continue to figure out when and where those conversations will continue and who will be part of them, and how to make time for them in intentional ways. The other pieces that we really want to encourage is we've seen how admin have crafted engaging conversations for their own faculty and staff members. And we encourage admin to bring those same practices into their meetings with one another so that every conversation that you're in can remain creative and dynamic and engaging. In terms of the problem-solving support that I was talking about earlier, in the sense of solving barriers to equity, we want to expand that resource and support that we've been providing to faculty and students at all 3 schools next year. And the way that we're planning on doing that is by holding weekly standing coaching sessions that we will be heavily staffing in order to support anyone who drops in for any support around problem solving a scenario or situation that's happening that they're looking to further equity within. Yeah. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Lily.
This goal here, we thought was going to be related to PD. That we were going to do with the district. And actually, another really cool thing that happened is that there is so much in the way of best practices and skill and content knowledge within the district itself that teachers and staff have to share with one another, that we actually did very little of our own PD, which we actually think is really cool. So I just want to emphasize that a big success from this year was a professional development day on March 18th, which allowed teachers to do peer-to-peer learning, skill share with one another, and come together as all 3 buildings and as a district, and have choice in what sort of professional development modules they joined. And that was considered, we got to look at all the feedback. It was very well received and was a really great structure, and people wanted more and more of that. And so we just want to emphasize that that what this showed us is that when staff have time to collectively plan and collaborate around equity issues, like problems get solved and skills get shared, and that culture gets to grow. So just wanting to emphasize how necessary it is for staff to have that time, whether it be in really intentional space in ILGs, as a faculty, having different departments be able to talk together, like special education and general education practitioners swapping notes, and also time on those half days and full district days to do just that. And this is a strength within the district, and we really want to emphasize how important it is and how valuable it is that exists here, and that teachers can hold that space for one another. And to add to that, we are in the next year offering some professional development that we want to really emphasize what diversity and inclusion-based relational practices look like, and make those available to teachers as they want them. Which is meeting facilitation for diverse groups, facilitating equity-related conversations, and dealing well with the aftermath of difficult situations. So we do have some stuff that we want to offer up, and it's stuff we've done in different pockets with a few people here and there. But yeah, but that's sort of our PD goals for next year. And then this is the last thing, and then we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for being on this journey with us. So the last goal that we had was improving district-wide communication to build trust. So we want to emphasize these are some successes that the district took on its own that we wanted to uplift, which is the introduction and training around Lexicate, which is a translation app that teachers can use when speaking with family members or students who don't speak English. Student-led work around introducing Parent Square as a better way of communicating updates about all 3 schools, and that happening at in the Monument Mountain community and was student-led. There were students involved in thinking about how best to pilot that, and the Monument Mountain newsletters were translated into Spanish to make them accessible to students and families who speak Spanish. And this is an area where there's room to grow, and we bring this up as sort of the linchpin of this project was what equity requires relational trust. And in order for students and parents and staff to trust that progress is happening, it's really important that that progress be communicated regularly. And so updates about progress around equity work to all stakeholders is really important, and as well as providing adequate lead time for stakeholders to participate in district-led equity work, so they have an opportunity to engage if they want to. And just something that I want to emphasize as like one way that we'll be a part of helping is we just started doing memos of our progress and like the work we were doing on a month-to-month basis to admin. And we are looking forward to expanding that to include all of these other equity initiatives that are happening in the different pockets of the district into one memo that administrators and others can share widely, including to the school committee, so that that progress is known throughout the school and people can respond to it and engage with it. Great. And Jen, are you with us?
I am with you.
Hi.
Yeah, so this has been a lot. Just to say that the district has taken on a lot of different equity initiatives and has brought in a lot of different consultants, and each building has its own sort of strategies and projects. And so one of the things that has emerged is that there's a real need to articulate how a lot of these simultaneous DEI initiatives connect and how they fit into the existing structures of the district. And the challenge is that, I mean, it's sort of an embarrassment of riches in some ways. There's a lot of people with equity in the district, but the challenge with that is that is that when these things aren't coordinated or communicated out effectively, folks can't share successes and knowledge around what's going on and best practices, and know where support can happen. And also when the district can't internally articulate how all of the different pieces fit together and articulate with each other, and this and structures can't be shifted accordingly to make space for that. And it makes it really difficult to engage the community in these initiatives and to communicate about them, and also for people to understand what is needed to continue success. So just to emphasize that we see a lot of like putting together some of these pieces and communicating them out through and which we're gonna start out doing through monthly memos as a real need for the district moving forward in order to make their equity initiatives not just a bunch of things thrown at the wall, but really feel cohesive and be understood as cohesive and be as a sort of cohesive strategy throughout the district. And kind of to wrap up, so we've already gone through all of these things, but just to wrap up, so our scope next year, the way that we hope to accompany the district, just to say, like, you all have been, I mean, if there's one thing that you should take from this has been a lot of information, is that there's been a huge amount of work that has been going on. And even honestly, the challenges that we have seen come up, we don't see those as bad indicators. We see those as indicators that there's work going on. Honestly, in equity and inclusion work, if there's no tension, nothing's really happening. Nothing meaningful is happening. And so our accompaniment has really brought up the need for really kind of continued work on the part of the district in a lot of the same directions and a few other directions that you all have also identified. So our scope next year includes continuing to accompany the Inclusion Task Force and their outreach efforts to really solidify what they've done. and build ongoing communication with administration that was started at the end of the year. Figure out a strategy to streamline the many parent engagement opportunities that exist in the district, and develop those. We're interested in developing a more equitable coaching and accompaniment process for faculty, students, and administrators to be able to engage with us when things come up in an efficient way that's accessible to everyone. Expanding some PD offerings to deepen the relational practices. Quarterly teacher-led meetings. We're going to focus on making sure that teachers have that time and holding that space for teachers to do that work with each other. Capacity building for some of the student groups, continuing the amazing work that has happened there. And then communicating all this out and making sure that everybody's on the same page on a regular monthly basis. And we're hoping that the last thing is that we're hoping at the end of next year that we will be able to step in and do kind of a bookend equity and assessment report, more of a comprehensive report to bookend the initial one that we did last spring, so that the district can kind of take a look at itself and see what are really what's the progress that has been made from different people's perspective. And we do pretty in-depth ethnographic research and site visits and a ton of interviews and focus groups in order to do that. And we think that a 2-year period is long enough to see some real progress. We're trying to work our way out of a job, and you all are helping with that. So open to questions. Apologies that this has gone long. It's been a long year and a lot of work has happened, and we didn't want to short any of it.
Great, thank you all. Does anyone on the school committee have any questions for our friends at Stoke?
No questions, just thanking them for all the work. I think it's personally been wonderful to know that they've been in the buildings, and I'm glad that the work will continue. So thank you so much.
Anybody else? Comments, questions, thoughts of any kind?
Okay, great. Well, thank you all very much. We look forward to continuing the work, and I appreciate the notion of putting yourself out of a job, though it'll make me sad because the work has been really fruitful and impactful. So thank you. We at least have another year going. And then for the broader community, even if they do put themselves out of a job, there's probably a every few year checkup to do, and we'd certainly be happy to bring them back for that, particularly because they understand our context so well. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Talk soon.
We'll share the PowerPoint presentation with you along with the notes that we were reading from, so folks can review it later. That was a lot to digest at once.
Great, thanks a bunch.
You bet. Have a good meeting.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do now, and we jumped out of order because we had them for a particular time frame and we had some technology issues, but why don't I give the meeting back to Rich to do the 2 sets of minutes, and then we'll start at the beginning again from the good news and go forward.
So I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 5th and May 19th. Second? Anybody? And second? Oh, we have the roll call vote, huh?
I have a list of names. You want me to
I can. William Fields. Yes. Jason St. Peter. Aye. Corey Sprague.
Aye.
Ann Hutchinson.
Yes.
We got Bonnie Buffoni.
Aye.
And Diane Singer.
And Diane Singer.
Yes.
Motion carries. Minutes of May 5th and May 19th stand approved. Okay. You want to go to the Treasury report? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So superintendent's report.
Yeah. So,
Peter.
the good news, a little good news on the district level, and then all the rest of the work is happening at the school level. The Berkshire United Way extended their support for another year for our after-school summer stuff. So we really appreciate Berkshire United Way, and we had a great site visit from Tom Bernard, their new CEO. And program director. So thanks to them for their support. Katie, what's going on at Muddy Brook?
Let's see. So we have, we're wrapping up the year, planning for next year, of course, but for the kids, we have tomorrow, Bhrsd Theater Group has come with our fourth graders. So there'll be 4 short plays, so they broke in their different classes, and those will be performed tomorrow afternoon, so that's exciting. We're planning a big field day up at Monument next week, next Thursday, hopefully. It looks like good weather right now. We have a new therapy dog. We're doing a naming contest right now with the kids. I personally like Barrington the best, but he's very cute. And then just moving into planning for summer PD. A lot of the teachers have chosen some extension tech activities and work that we started this year, so we're excited to get things taken care of. And also we are looking at tiered support and behavior support at the building just to get it firmed up with Cynthia and I after 1 year of seeing the processes, and we'll have some input from teachers to move into next year.
Great. Ben, and I know you always have a giant list. If you could do
This one is short.
the brief list.
We did just really nice field trips with Audubon in the 5th grade, and field study in the valley. 6th grade, we had a field trip out to Country Park to celebrate the community. Moving to a 7th and 8th grade team next year, so we did some really nice lessons with 7th graders rising to 8th grade about changes. The 8th graders actually had a really great visit in high school for sports coaches.
Cool. So, Christy, do you want to go or right to Julian?
Usually Julian goes first, and then I just.
Yeah, so on the. Okay, good. So Julian, great.
I share your sentiments. I'll keep it brief. The hallways are quiet without our seniors, but our juniors are taking nicely to their new role as the oldest students in the building and are working with the administration to plan for a great year next year, and that includes the infamous senior privileges. This last Friday, we celebrated our seniors with a final pep rally. We celebrated our seniors, and then most importantly, the end of the year, students of all grades were involved. We worked really hard to include students from all aspects and parts of the building in tug of wars, games of soccer, pie eating competitions, and balloon popping relays. Prom is tomorrow night, which is exciting for many. Our seniors are going to get to celebrate with their classmates once more. Members of our junior class are going to celebrate as well, our sophomores as well. But I don't believe any freshmen are going this year, so no one is going for the 4-time crown. Students are engaged in their work. They're doing final projects with fun spring assignments, making ice cream in chem class, or taking walks to the outdoor classroom, or even around our campus. But it's definitely, I'm sure, a trying time for faculty and staff to keep those students engaged. So we thank them, and they're doing a great job at it. Senioritis spreads quickly through the building, so inevitably becomes junioritis, sophomoritis, and even freshmanitis, and I'm sure teacheritis as well. I thought I was going to go first, so I just mentioned the great work Stoke was doing, but we're stoked out. Our National Honor Society is doing a lot of community service and is displaying the values of what Monument students are and what we work to be in the community, and providing for our elderly citizens and many groups. But additionally, other student groups like Charlie's Fund are working hard to bring what we're doing at Monument out into the community, and even supporting our students in our building. And then finally, just spirit is high as the light of the summer comes in, and everyone is excited for these celebrations, with graduation to follow this Sunday, performances from our band and our chorus. Those of you going to graduation, I know you all are. The chorus performance is amazing. It will bring tears to your eyes. And then we have a recognition this upcoming week for scholarships that our junior students applied for and were awarded. And then we also had a celebration this morning for scholarships that our seniors applied for and were awarded. So a lot is going on, but all very good stuff.
Great, thanks, Julian. Christy, do you have a?
I have one thing. Julian covered a lot of ground, which is wonderful. What I do want to share with the school committee that we did receive news this week that we were awarded the Rethinking Grading Initiative grant from the state, and that is in line with our work in our 9th and 10th grade teams to shift proficiencies. This is coming from the state of Massachusetts. Is hoping that Massachusetts is kind of moving in this direction, and we're at the lead of that across the state. So we're super excited that we received that grant, and it's a 2-year grant to support the work of shifting our grading practices. Only 5 schools in the county help for
Yeah, it's a really big deal. It's sort of embargoed, so we weren't supposed to talk about it, but you might not have seen that. So we're really going to talk about it in 2 weeks. Moving on. There was a subsequent email after the initial. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, no, we're going to do that. So the only other thing I wanted to share, because we sort of alluded to it, but it's really a remarkable number. The scholarships that were awarded today were in the amount of $318,000 change, and that's all community-based, so that doesn't include scholarships that colleges and universities are giving to students. That's private scholarships, the Rotary Club, named scholarships. And it's really remarkable, and a number of them are connected to people who passed away too early. And if you've not been to that ceremony, it's a really powerful one to go to. A lot of joy and a lot of remembering. So very neat. What we're going to move to now is an introduction, and I sent this to you by email. I'm actually going to have Keith introduce himself. And sorry, Keith, you got behind the stove people, and when that happens, your commute doubles. So sorry about that. But Keith is a current chemistry teacher at the high school, and previously he taught at Du Bois at the middle school, and we've recently hired him as our new assistant principal for career technical and vocational education. And I asked him to put together a really thoughtful introduction, because he'll do it better than I will, to tell you a little bit about himself and what he's starting to work on. So welcome, Keith, to this group.
Thank you. I've had a really delightful 3.5 years here in the district as a middle school science teacher, and this past year at the high school as an AP chemistry teacher. The students just blew me away in the 8th grade, like just right out of the gate. They were problem solvers. They had great teamwork. They had so much background knowledge and so much curiosity. That I really got hooked on the district. And I have a lot of colleagues that really approach their work with just so much passion and enthusiasm that too is contagious. So the new position is exciting to me. It's my hope that as a district, we can leverage the promise of CBT programming to increase students' post-secondary opportunities. So in the next few months, I've actually already started to talk with teachers, better understand existing programs. I will be connecting with people at SC on CBT and connect with local consultants. And there's a wealth of knowledge just right on campus that it's sometimes like drinking out of a fire hose, but I'm sure it'll calm down. I'm looking forward to meeting the CBT Advisory Council, talk to local business people and students and families, because we're looking for areas for growth. So, specifically my charge is to grow our Chapter 74 programs and to explore a range of possibilities as they relate to a new school and potentially a combined high school, which is also a pretty exciting part of the portfolio. So, in addition to all that, I would really like to continue my work creating space for student voice through the Student Advisory Board. I've been working with them over this spring, and also to be a resource for the high school as we continue our equity work around proficiencies and D-level, which I have a lot of experience with on the teacher side. So I'm hoping to come back in October and share some updates and expanded thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Keith, and welcome aboard. Anybody, it's a little early, so we shouldn't take them over the coals, but does anybody have any early questions for Keith?
I have an easy one, I think,
Yeah.
just because I've been getting it from people, because there's confusion over the vice principal title, and so people have been saying, how is your role going to differ from Peter Belkowski?
Yeah, we're still working that out at the admin team. But I think that my main focus needs to be to growing our CBT program. But I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to be part of the leadership team at the high school.
Yeah, so we did meet, been in conversation about just delineating job responsibilities. Peter Bhrsd's main primary focus is student affairs and student management. And he and I have tried to share even evaluative responsibilities for teacher evaluation. That's been a real challenge when his focus is supposed to be so much on the student side of the work. And I think he will certainly be able to support some aspects of the program specifically as it relates to the career technical. There are other pieces as well that I think sometimes the three of us will be a team, and sometimes we'll decide who is responsible for which component of the administrative work of the buildings.
And so in simplest terms, the explicit portfolio will be the 2 Chapter 74 vocational programs, the possibility of creating 4 more programs, and then programs that fall under the sort of broader CBT things. So the early childhood, technology, or horticulture and automotive, and then some of the career pathways and internship opportunities. Okay, and then the thing Keith mentioned, the sort of student voice piece, he's got a strong background there that typically might not sit with assistant principal for CBTE, but demonstrated success, interest, and it's important to the district, so we'll make some space there. Cool. All right.
I just want to add one thing, I'm sorry, that in the context of the building principle, the work connected to the building project that's coming our way and the visualization work, my ability to take a lot of the CBTE, even like grant work, I don't know if people realize how many grants we have connected to all of this programming. And shift that off of my plate will be, I think, helpful for me as a building principal to then be able to devote more focus to some of these larger projects that are, as a district, are really focused.
Great. Okay, are we good? So the next one, I'll have Kate explain this, but it's a request to approve an additional speech language pathologist. And Kate's online tonight. Kate, could you just give a little context, and then after you do it, I'll add anything else that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually, though it's a new position, it's really a shift. This goes back to in the fall when I asked you guys about adding a speech language pathology assistant, which you graciously said yes to, which was fantastic. And we've really struggled to fill positions across the board this year, and that was one position that we have not been able to fill. So the needs that I outlined in the fall that we had for that position have gone. It's been challenging on our team that we've got because we haven't been able to get that assistant in to support them. In the meantime, our referrals and initial evals have increased by about 190%, and so that's another piece that our current team is working with. Another factor in this is that we have a program at the high school that we have struggled to staff. It's a program for students with significant disabilities, and our plan for next year, a piece of that plan is that we're going to move one of our speech language pathologists into that program for half-time. So by moving her into that half-time, we're losing that piece of her work. And we feel that if we shift away from the SLPA, the assistant position, and bring in another full-time SLP, speech language pathologist, that should cover our needs.
One thing that Kate didn't quite underline the speech language pathologist who she's moving into the part special ed position holds both licenses.
My apologies. That's correct.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the additional speech language pathologist position? So move. Second?
Second.
And one second. Any discussion or certainly comment for Kate or anything?
Thank you. And we'll withdraw the SLPA, the assistant posting. That'll be gone now.
Do you want me to?
No, I got it.
Will you be able to fill this position?
I think there's a greater likelihood we'll fill a full-time speech language pathology position than a speech language pathology assistant position, and clearly I need to see one of them.
All right, so a roll call vote. Corey Sprague.
Aye.
Diane Singer.
Yes.
William Fields.
Yes.
Bonnie Von Buffoni.
Aye.
Jason St. Peter.
Aye.
And Hutchinson.
Aye.
And I vote yes, unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So the next one I'll try to explain. We have invested in stipended teacher leadership positions in the district for quite some time. And we're proposing that we change them slightly. So there are two in front of you, one for instructional lead, and I'll go through the changes on that, and then one for an SEL lead, which is social emotional learning, which is taking the place of what used to be called a team coordinator. So the instructional lead is largely the same. There are a couple changes that are crossed out, or one that's crossed out, and then a couple addition bullet points. So one of the bullet points is improved student learning outcomes through improved academic instruction and assessment. And then another one is instructional practice coaching peers. We're having folks do up to 5 days of summer professional development. And we're saying that the director of learning and teaching will meet with them at least once a month. So that I think is fairly straightforward. The second one is the SEL one, which I don't happen to have in my packet. John, can you just talk through the changes on that one? Give it in front of you. Or I'll grab one too. All right. So the big change is the name change from teacher team coordinator to social emotional learning lead, or SEL lead. We added demonstrated knowledge about the professional and community resources in the school and district. Collective in the job goals, collectively support and lead the school improvement plan and district improvement plan initiatives, and then provide input to organize and prioritize professional development related specifically to SEL. We took out facilitating spending of professional development and supporting substitutes, and we added increased wellness and SEL knowledge and skill for staff, meaning increased student opportunity and outcomes. Again, up to 5 days in the summer, they'll meet with the building administrator, which could be a principal or assistant principal. They'll do some research and preparation. They'll organize the curriculum around SEL advisory morning meetings. It's called different things in each building, and then engage in school-wide discussions around it. So I think it's a nice shift. We still anticipate talking about this additionally with the union, but we'd like your support going into those conversations.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve revisions to exhibit B job descriptions, instructional lead, and social emotional learning lead?
So moved.
And with the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Or the second? Any debate or discussion? No questions? No, we'll move to a vote then. Corey Sprague.
Aye.
Diane Singer.
Yes.
William Fields.
Yes.
Bonnie Bonzafoni.
Aye.
Jason St. Peter.
Aye.
Ann Hutchinson.
Aye.
And I vote yes, carried unanimously.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next one is a hard one, right? And we talk about it often, and I'm sorry we're talking about it again. And I put in, it's about school safety, right? And I put a memo in the packet that you have, and I'll go through that. But the context is so terrible that since I've written a memo a week ago, there's now been another shooting. It wasn't in a school, but it was in a hospital, right? And probably before our next meeting, there'll be 2 or 3 more shootings. We're in a very, very difficult time in this country, particularly in schools, around school safety. So I'm going to tell you some of what we're doing, and some of you, or the public or the press, are going to say, can you tell me the exact plan? And my answer is no, I'm not going to tell you the exact plan, because I don't want to telegraph what we're trying to do to somebody who wants to do our students or staff harm. So I'll talk around it. If people on the school committee want to meet in executive session about the exact plans, I'm super happy to do that. But the more I read about this and the more work we do around it, we had to keep some of our cards close to our chest. Right? There are 2 sort of basic ideas. One is softening and one is hardening, and they seem like they're in opposition to each other, but they're actually, or can be, quite complementary. So softening is this notion, and people describe it lots of ways, but if you build deep relationships in a community and with students and each other, then students talk openly, and you find out who's at risk or who's hurting or who's disconnected, and that informs decisions you make. So we do a lot around softening. That's what the SEL stuff is. That's what advisory is. That's what checking in with people is. And I see all our principals do this at different times. They stand at the door and watch every single young person walk in and make eye contact, and you know who's having a good day and who's having a bad day, and that's better than any metal detector you could have. You look somebody in the eye and you see where they're at. So that's part of it. We're doing all these things I outlined. Lots of advisory. People are all getting trained in mental health first aid. We're continuing our work with Ruler and Yale. We're working collaboratively with sort of every organization under the sun. There's our collaborative care approach. There are deep connections to the Green Center and Jones and almost anybody you can think of. And then when we see atypical behaviors, we track it and flag it and dig in and try to hold and support and listen to young people, and in many cases to families too. Right? So that's sort of the whole softening side. We've also added several clinical staff, and maybe coming back to you in the fall for one more position, and then I promise I'll stop. On the hardening side, our work was really informed by our partnership with the Great Barrington Police Department, particularly Chief Story and Jim Bragdon, and the state police. And Steve and I, and the assistant principals, and sometimes the principals, meet pretty regularly to talk about that. We conduct drills. You saw, right, like we had a big drill scheduled for the day after the Texas shooting, and I had to cancel that, right? Because a drill in and of itself is traumatizing, but the drill the day after 20-some people are shot is outrageous. We will start doing those again. We've worked through this Alice approach. It used to be you just sort of hid, and now you hide and fight back a little, right? And at the right time, you open a door or window and run for the woods. We have buzzer systems and cameras in our schools. We're doing a lot of work around threat assessment, and what that is, we're reinforcing exits and entrances. Without going into detail, some of our buildings are a little more vulnerable than others. You may have noticed that the Great Barrington Police are having a much more active presence in and around the schools for about the last 2 weeks. That's going to continue through the end of the year. And I'm going to continue to meet with Chief Storty about that through next year. And by August, when school opens, we'll likely have a new anonymous reporting system where if students or families or community members have concerns, that goes to a trained switchboard that then gets referred to several of the leadership team in the district so we can act on it. And that's seen to be high quality and well respected. We're sitting on some resources from the Department of Justice, which is particularly focused around this. We're working on that, and we're continuing to reflect on our approaches and seeing how that evolves. With the amount of time we have left in the school year, I don't think we're going to squeeze in an active drill right now. But anticipating hopefully a slightly more normal year next year. We'll get to those early in the fall before the weather turns. We have a lot of work to do as a country and a community. Thankfully, we're in Massachusetts, and the context is much better than in many other states in the country, but if you really think about the enormity of this and the magnitude of it, if you actually take the time to do it, you're just going to burst into tears. It's terrible, and that we have to train kindergarten students to not be shot is overwhelming. We'll continue to do it, and I hope that we see additional change at the state and national level. I rarely lobby for things politically, and I don't own much orange, but apparently tomorrow is Wear Orange Day. So if you own anything that's orange, tomorrow might be a good day to wear it. Any questions about safety? And again, I'm happy to respond, and I'll respond in detail where it's appropriate. Yeah.
I guess my question is just if you could provide some detail about like communication from the school, and is there sort of an approach to what warrants communication and what doesn't, and then what warrants communication from the whole district, from you, or from an individual building principal? Because I know things go around in the hallways, and there's rumors, and absolutely things are said every day, and I'm not sure I can say that any communication comes from the school.
Yeah, all sorts of things happen every day, right? Johnny looks at Sally the wrong way. That's like on the lowest point of escalation to there's a fight or an incident or a threat. Typically, we try to get ahead of the rumor mill, and with Snapchat, and I shouldn't just blame them, but social media in general, but things like Snapchat, often your parents know about stuff before I do, or your classmates do, right? I know about stuff within a minute or two, but when something happens, the word gets out. So we try to get ahead of rumors and send messages, but if any time anything happened, we send a message, it would be like enfeebling, crippling. right? So if it's most of the times we sort of talk about is something a credible threat or non-credible threat, and if it's minor, two kids get in a fight in a classroom, it's typically over and it's done. But if it's something more than that, we work with the police department or even occasionally the DA's office on stuff, and then a more formal message gets out. Because so many of us have connections across all the buildings, we tend to just be wicked transparent and let everybody know, because if we don't let everybody know, then people are talking about it at Price Chopper and Big Line. Who does? We've been relatively lucky, and I think we support people pretty well. So the number of serious incidents is limited, but there have been some, and we can probably always communicate better. Right, and it may be like it may be something violent. It may be an allegation of somebody using drugs or selling drugs in school. There's a whole, or doing vandalism. Right, there's a whole range of things. Other questions?
I was just going to ask about the Department of Justice grant.
Yeah.
That we received for $800,000 last year, correct? Without getting into too much financial aspect, has a lot of that been used in regards to the hardening process that you mentioned, in regards to the 3 buildings? And of course, the building that is most vulnerable is the oldest building, which is Michael Town.
That's what we weren't talking about, though. It's true,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to get specific. So that money there is money there, and is there a chance that we're going to get more, or is this all in a 1-year program, or is it more than that?
It's 3 years, and the money rolls over. We're starting to invest some of it. Some of it I'm fine talking about. We're going to do some more radios and an enhanced antenna system. I could go back and look at all the details. That's no secret that we'll have more radios. It's a good thing. And I want people to know we have more radios. We have lots of radios. We're keeping an eye on you. And then some of the other stuff, I don't particularly want to talk about, but hypothetically it would be about entrances and exits, doors and windows, things like that. There's even a whole school of thought that, like, and this is going to sound crazy, that you can do landscaping in such a way as to promote safety, right? So we'll see some things like that. So half the money is sort of for hardening stuff, half the money is for softening stuff. And interestingly, some of the work with Stoke falls under the softening stuff. And I love for people to know about all the softening things we're doing, because I think that's really good and should be known. I'm excited about this anonymous call system. It came out of the Sandy Hook partnership. And it's like peer-reviewed, highly rated, well recommended, and it doesn't end up. It's set up in a really sophisticated way. I'm doing another call on it on Tuesday, but it doesn't, like, Christy or somebody in the high school could designate multiple points of contact, which might not even be the principal, but it might be all the clinical staff in the building, so the principal doesn't potentially become the bottleneck, and there can be built-in redundancy, so multiple people hear it, and it's translated, and if it rises above a certain level, then there are also opportunities to get the police involved.
And my only comment on all this is that I'm glad we're in a school district that really prizes, and my history of it, in both teaching and on this committee, we prize communication with students and student relationships. And just talking to some students as I have in the last few years, and my own granddaughters who are now in the high school, it's good to see that these relationships have gotten stronger as they've gone through, and not just kind of, oh, well, that's what they do. This district is really good in regards to that. And as I said, I think my first year on this committee, that's a key to dealing with this issue, is the relationships that exist in the building between staff and students that allow people to have trust and open communication. And I'm glad to see that Stoke is involved, and I wish that we could get more money and get more involvement, certainly with the community too, in regards to this open communication and trust.
No, I agree, and I've sort of worked on both ends of this. At one point, I was involved in trying to remove metal detectors from schools, and the argument we made was that the metal detector maybe plays a role in an airport, but in a school, deep relationships are much more meaningful. So we'll keep working on this. I'm sorry.
One observation, and maybe it's obvious, but it can't hurt to state, but obviously, you canceled drills last week because of what that might do to students and be upsetting, but just understanding that increased police presence in the school can also be upsetting to students, and so making sure that we're working to offset that.
Yeah. So one of the things that the police department is trying to do is be seen in all sorts of different contexts. So they start early with the elementary school, and I think is the dog's name Archer? There are all these dogs. It's hard to keep all the dogs straight. Archer, Lily, this, that. There are a lot of dogs. But so they're trying to build relationships in the early grades. So they're explicitly not seen as threatening, but this is a guy or gal who has a cool dog and is here to help and protect us. And then a range of alternatives as young people get older, connected to explorers and other activities. Several of the current police officers were at different times coaches or assistant coaches. So that's a neat thing. We're working hard on that, but it's really complex, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only detail about that that's just such a minute thing is maybe we just make sure there's an emphasis that in those situations, they don't have to beat up the gun. Because I know as a high school student, when the dogs come in still, seeing all of that regalia is very intimidating. So I'm sure even for a kindergarten student, seeing an officer simply in their uniform without all of the...
Yeah, so we've talked about this about 100 times, and not you and I, but in general, the deal is with officers that they're trained, and when they're wearing the uniform, their gun is part of their uniform, and they have an obligation to wear it, and it would actually put them in a terrible situation to be in a uniform without it. So I know that's hard and it sends mixed messages, but that's just, I've raised the same thing early in my time, and that's just, there are very few non-negotiables in life, and that one is actually a non-negotiable. Right? Now they may come in other times when they're not on duty, and they just have t-shirt and shorts on, and in that context, they would not need it. So we'll continue to work on this. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Amanda Gorman, the the poet, and I used all my restraint to not print a copy of her most recent poem, and read it, right? But I'll send it around to you if you haven't seen it. Her tone and cadence is quite remarkable, always, but particularly in this recent one about what's happening in schools. So we'll keep talking about it. Expect some additional drills, and we'll try really hard to find this right balance where we're soft and hard, supportive simultaneously. Okay. You ready to move on to something light? All right. Yeah, so I got a little COVID for you. Now, the good news is we were like peaking at 740 cases earlier, a couple weeks ago, per 100,000 or something, right? Terrible. And we want the magic number to be around 60. Which is nowhere near, but as of today, the weekly number of cases is 352. So we're not out of the woods yet, but we're making progress. And then I think most importantly, the infection rate is down to 0.79. So for those of you who've been playing along at home, anything less than 1 is good, and 0.79 is really pretty good. So we got work to do, but things are moving in a good direction, and I hope that happens. So your guess is as good as mine. What happens with summer and tourism and prom and graduation and on and on. It looks to me like about 40% of our school community has at least tested positive once. So there are not that many more of us left to test positive. I don't know. So here's the next thing, and this is sort of interesting. The state is obviously rolling back its support for testing and funding going forward. During the summer, for our summer programs, and we think we may serve in total something like 350 students, we were able to secure self-test for both symptomatic testing in the building, but also for weekly at-home testing, and the cost of that's covered. So I think that's great. But we're going to be stepping away from pool testing in the summer. We're just going to be doing these at-home tests and symptomatic testing. As we look forward to next year, the state will stop supporting surveillance pool or self-tests, and schools can choose to purchase them ourselves or the district through a statewide contract. And the support we've been getting from the CIC, the company that's been helping us out on this, will no longer be available. So we're going to continue to, or I'm going to continue to recommend people get vaccinated if they haven't, and to participate in the various booster cycles as those are available, and for symptomatic people to do testing. And then the quarantine guidelines changed again. So it used to be if you tested positive, you needed to isolate and stay home for 5 days. Now they're letting you come back to school or work and wear a mask for 5 days. And then you're supposed to continue to wear a mask for the next 5 days after that. So I just sort of want to tell you where we are with this now. Before our next meeting, I'll do some math around what the cost of purchasing, I don't know, 20,000 self-tests would be, and if that's something we want to invest in or not. I did share with staff that the federal government is now sending another set of test kits. I ordered some, and they're free. I ordered some the other day, and they sent me 10. Right? So that's another option too. So we'll do a cost benefit analysis and talk about it probably at the next meeting. But so we have a plan going into the summer. We may also have a number of tests on hand that haven't expired that we could at least start the year with. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So the next one, and I asked John to talk about this a little bit, are sort of the wide range of summer professional development opportunities. We've got a tremendous list of things, and I thought it makes sense for him to take a few minutes to do a quick overview of it.
Yes, thanks. One of the unique things about this district is the amount of professional development we offer over the summer, and I just wanted to point that out. We have, here's an exhaustive list. I won't read off all of them, but we have many things at the district level, and then each of the schools has their own professional development that they're working with teachers on, and we really, sort of offer teachers, hey, what are your ideas for professional development over the summer? We work with them in developing a plan for them to work together to basically improve their instructional practices and system outcomes. So at the district level, we have many things, many varied things. We have things ranging from safety care, which is our de-escalation training program. We're offering that recertification and judicial certifications over the summer. We also have a work with our partners at GSP on proficiency-based rating and feedback. And additionally, with GSP, we're offering an online PD that they have, which is about pursuing racial equity in education. And GSP is also working at the school-based level throughout the summer too, with teams at schools working on proficiency-based grading and aligning proficiency curriculum and the daily practice. We also have another GSP-led online module that is called Designing a More Equitable Advisory System that folks that are middle school and high school are hoping to participate in. We're actually also working with the mentors to develop a new to BHRSD teacher guide, which sort of talks about all of the things that a new teacher in the new district needs to know and how the district works. It's not really a mentor program thing, but it's more of an informational piece for teachers to work with office on that information. We have two things lined up for English learner professional development. We have our in-house expert, Lydia Johnson, our newer English language learner teacher, who's going to be doing some instructional practices and support with teachers here in the district. In 2 weeks actually, and folks are signing up for that already. We also have offering one through our partners, who has an online program entitled Building on Cultural and Background Knowledge of English Language Learners. That's another support they're offering for all teachers. And then we have our new teacher orientation program, which is the day before all the other teachers come in August. That's August 24th. We also have first aid and CPR training, which we're offering both June and August for teachers and paraprofessionals. And at elementary school, Katie already talked a little bit about their tiered support and behavioral process groups that are working together. We also have a community connections group, which is this great program that they developed, which one helps students in the community and the connections, but also helps teachers have meeting time during the school day. We're trying to increase that meeting time next year, so they're developing extra curricular to that needs. We also have them working on SEL mapping, curriculum mapping, and a math fact fluency development that we keep pre-K to second grade teachers are working on. And then at the middle school, we have more proficiency-based feedback workshops internally and with GSP. We also have, they're working on the W Boys Curriculum Project. And in addition to that, there's also the Boys Legacy Project Institute that teachers will be working on there. And they have various summer projects similar to what we talked about at the high school. We have things that are focused for the entire community, but also some things that are really targeted to 9th and 10th grade teams in the level and proficiency work. We have curriculum development and alignment, which is refining indicators, aligned proficiencies, rubrics and all that stuff. And we also have the UDL differentiation workshop, which we're working with our a partner that we utilized before, Tanya Moorhead, out of Eastern Connecticut State University, and that's really targeted at the 9th and 10th grade teams, and helping them with the work that they're doing there, and also targeted at the 9th and 10th grade teams for a workshop with GSP and other consultants that were bringing in there. In addition to that, we have a grading practices team that is looking at transforming our grading system. We put up and announced something that we weren't supposed to, sorry, but it's sort of connected to that. And then I'll take total responsibility for that. We were both very busy all day.
Stop talking about it.
But my bad on that one. And then we also connected to another grant that we are talking about, continue to talk about, connected to the BARD grant. We have a rigor, relevance, and purpose group that is working on a lot of things, including cultural responsive teaching in a group this summer, and it's sort of a continuation of the BARD grant work that we've been doing for the year, and hopefully we'll be doing for a few years to come. And then also at the high school, and soon joining with the middle school and elementary schools, a schedule team looking at schedule, future schedule changes that can better meet the needs.
I'm still here.
And then, of course, there's also course development that happens every summer with teachers refining their curricula, working together in teams to partner their classrooms. And there's more about it.
Great. Any questions or wondering? We can also send around the list of opportunities. So if you want to click on links and dig into things, you can do that.
One question, last year, right around this time, we did an overview of summer programming that was available for students. Is that something that you could possibly do at the next meeting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we could share stuff. Last summer was sort of unusual because it was the post-COVID thing. The big thing is project connection and opportunities connected to that, and then a potential opportunity tied to Simon's Rock, and then some internships. The other thing is, I think you're probably aware of this, the jobs market is really wacky. And even so in the high school guidance newsletter, there's like a list of 30 available positions, and one that sticks out is the town of Stockbridge is hiring people and paying them $20 an hour to do like light maintenance, which is a great opportunity. Even rivals like being a lifeguard on a not very busy lake. So this might be a really good summer for high school students to do some work. Thanks.
Yeah, there's two in particular for you that I just would like to highlight. One, Julia has actually been a part of planning, and that's the student advocacy program at high school with restorative justice work. The students have been recruiting peers to participate in training this summer, so that we can grow that work as we look towards next year. And actually, my dear friend over here, Mr. Wright, has been working with our partner at Up for Learning to organize student training at the end of the summer. It'll be in August, kind of launch us for next year in our student advisory board work. But to provide students training in facilitation skills, because the last time we did that was in 2019 in the fall before the pandemic. So we're trying to get that again relaunched, regrow that work that students were doing.
Yeah, we definitely put something together. A lot of what we did last year was sort of online based and not campus based, and much of what we're doing this year is campus based. Kind of falls under the umbrella.
And you get you have a regional school district planning board update, Peter, or not?
Just to flag 2 dates, and I just sent a reminder about.
You sent the email out today or yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, the 28th and the 30th. They're going to be 2 big online facilitated community conversations on those days. I sent it out. I'll send it again. I'll send it many more times. But if folks could participate in one of those, that would be great.
Any subcommittee reports?
We did make building grounds.
All right, what do you got?
I know it's been a long meeting, so I'll be as quick as I can. Obviously, first on building security, I'm not going to get into a lot of it here. I know a lot of what we're going to say. But needless to say, we spent a pretty bit of time on that. Physical aspects of the schools. Second thing is the playgrounds. All 3 of them have been professionally inspected and highlight any changes or fixes we need to do. So this summer, Steve's going to have all 3 playgrounds in each building up and stuff. Let's see, the next thing, HVAC in the elementary school. Again, we're converting to just a new communication board. The one put in originally is 20 years old, outdated. So this summer, and finally, the chiller is going out to bid this week, and that hopefully will be done over the summer. The middle school, everything's going there over the summer. We upgraded the library, as well as the desks at a high school, HVAC, we continue to upgrade that as best we can. Other big thing is high school for Wi-Fi. Again, over the summer, there should be significant improvements outside, so we're hoping that we'll be able to be used in the greenhouse as well as a lot of the athletic fields. Also the freezer. The freezer has Wi-Fi, which in the past, been a potential problem because the freezer goes and there's thousands of food there, it could be a problem. So that's all up to date, and Steve has it plugged right into his phone, so at 3 a.m. on Sunday, no excuse. Wastewater treatment facility audit came back. All was good. There's a few minor inputs that we're getting. Steve is working on that one well. And then again, the summer plans. Number 1, the high school, we're going to upgrade the JV softball field, turn the infield into clay/dirt or whatever that. No grass there.
That's on the other side of the tennis court?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So that's a big one. Also, here in the Stockbridge office on the first floor, the SPED life skills program is going to be going, so we can put some upgrades there and getting that going. And that's pretty much about it. One last thing, the weight room in the high school, that's a small little weight room. It's going to be hopefully turned into a training room where, there'll be training tables with kids who want to, take and athletic training situation. For sure, money that should be hopefully beneficial for all the kids, both in athletics and even non-athletics. A big meeting condensed into a couple minutes.
Any other subcommittees?
Superintendent evaluation met just now, and we went spend an hour with Peter going over his goals and where he is with them and where we're going in the future. We should have a report in a couple of weeks.
Oh, no. Yeah. I just have one other thing. This is the late breaking news. And this is complicated, but I just want to flag it because it'll be a big community issue. The Monday is the Great Barrington Town Meeting, which is great, and it's at 6 p.m. in our parking lot. Our baseball team also has inevitably a home game on Monday, and at the same time, we can't move the home game to Sunday because it's graduation, and we're not sure if we can move it to Tuesday. So I will be spending tomorrow morning problem solving that, and I don't know what the answer will be, but I will share that. But the downside of having the town meeting in the parking lot is we can't use the parking lot for the baseball game. So we'll come up with some answer.
Finance and not meet, we're meeting before the next meeting, so we'll have a report then. Is there any old or new business?
I just got one. The personnel report. So yes, you asked us to start putting vacancies to be filled, and so we did. And there's a whole list of vacancies. But the really good news is we've been interviewing, and I can't say that we filled one position, the high school special education position. So we could cross that off the list. And then there are 3, maybe 4 other positions that we're close to closing on. A science position at the middle school, a health position at the middle school, and a music/strings position. So that's great. Ben, just remind me, I can't keep them all straight. We're not close to closing on the math position yet.
No, we haven't had any actual candidates
Okay.
yet, but we're looking for several more rounds.
So in practical terms, what that leaves is a math position at the middle school, a general music course position at the middle school, and then a bunch of paraprofessional roles. So, I'm sorry, kindergarten at the elementary school. But are you scheduling interviews yet or not quite yet?
No, it closes Tuesday.
Okay.
The next Monday.
Yeah, that's great. So we're making progress, and there's summers that we've gone into with multiple vacancies, particularly historically in science almost every year, and it'll be nice to not go into the summer with those vacancies. So now that really is it for me.
Any old or new business? With that, we stand adjourned by unanimous consent.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
That's clear.